In this episode of Pop Culture Weekly, I talk with Fandango's Erik Davis all about what we can look forward to in 2024, and we talk Fandango audience's list of top 10 most anticipated movies. Let's go!
Welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon from iHeartRadio. Your pop culture news, views, reviews, and celebrity interviews on all the movies, TV, music, and pop culture you crave weekly. Here's Kyle McMahon.
Hello and welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon from iHeartRadio. I, of course, am Kyle McMahon, and I am excited. This is our first episode of 2024. We've got a lot of great stuff coming this year that I can't wait to share with you. Just to give you a hint, we're going to be doing a lot more video this year. Video everywhere. Socials, the website, the blogs, everywhere. That's what that means, I guess. So wherever you are, video is going to be there from me to you. So hopefully you like it and you comment and you subscribe and you share or whatever. Most importantly, I just want you to interact with me. That's why I love doing this. I love talking to you about movies and music and TV series and technology and all things pop culture. And that's why I do this show. I do it for you, to talk with you, and, you know, let's do it. So I'm looking forward to that in 2024, upcoming 2024, whatever you want to say. So in this episode, Fandango managing editor Erik Davis comes back. I always love talking with him. And we discuss what we're looking forward to in 2024 in movies, as well as the Fandango survey of the Fandango audience, their top 10 most anticipated films of 2024. What made the list? What didn't? What is like missing that I'm like, wait a second, I can't wait to see that, but it's not on the list because, you know, Fandango audience didn't put it enough, I guess, on their list. So let's get right into my interview and let's discuss all of the most anticipated films of 2024. Here he is, Erik Davis. So I am here with Erik Davis, managing editor at Fandango, and we are going to talk about some exciting stuff Fandango is doing, as well as what we're looking forward to in 2024. How you doing, Erik?
I'm doing great, man. I'm ready for a new year of movies.
Yeah, me too. What's going on with you in your world these days?
Well, you know, this is such an interesting time because it's the beginning of a new year. So there's a ton of films that are on the schedule that we're starting to kind of learn more about and see some early stuff. We're approaching Super Bowl, where we're hopefully going to see some trailers, maybe some first looks at some of the bigger movies. It's also award season. Yeah. We're in the thick of it right now. You know, as we speak, the Golden Globes have happened. SAG has announced their nominees. Critics' Choice Awards is coming up, which is a show that I vote in and that I attend. So we're in the thick of the award season now that the holidays have passed.
Speaking of the holidays, what has been your favorite films that you've seen over the holiday season?
You know, I was a really big fan of Wonka, the Timothée Chalamet movie. I grew up on the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka movie, which, you know, he's a bit more eccentric. He's a bit crazier in that film. And so there was something really sweet and lovely and sentimental about this new Wonka, which kind of wears its heart on its sleeve. Reminded me in some ways of Annie, the musical Annie, in terms of its music and its sensibilities. And I just thought it was a really lovely film for families over the holidays. And it did pan out that way. A lot of families are going. They're still going to see it. And so for me, in terms of like that stretch of holiday releases, Wonka was my favorite.
Yeah, I loved Wonka. I also really loved The Color Purple, which I had, obviously the original film is a beloved classic. The book is a beloved classic. And I knew that it was going to be a musical, obviously based on the stage play. What I didn't know was that it was kind of amalgam of the book and the movie and the stage play. It wasn't a direct adaptation of the musical, but it took elements from the film and it took elements from the book. And then even took some sections out from the musical, from the Broadway production, and they added some songs in, and anyway, I was really, really enamored with it. I saw it in a packed house on like a random Monday night, which I was really also pleasantly surprised at. And you know, for me, and I'm sure for you, I love the communal aspect of film going. You know, I have Regal Unlimited, and I use the heck out of that thing. And you know, a lot of times, especially in our industry, we get sent screeners, or you know, we go to a screening or whatever, and there's something different, in my opinion, about going and seeing it in your local hometown theater with a room full of people excited to see this movie. And I really felt that with The Color Purple, which I was, again, kind of surprised at. I thought it would be dead on a Monday night, and there'd be, you know, a couple of people maybe there, and it was a packed house, and everybody really seemed to enjoy it. For you, going into, you know, especially the first couple of months of 2024, but there's some really exciting stuff coming out all year. What are you looking forward to?
Well, it's funny you mentioned The Color Purple, and I feel like this is a new kind of trend that we're starting to see when it comes to films that have been adapted to the stage and there's musical involvement. You know, I look at Mean Girls, it kind of reminded me, very different from The Color Purple, but also similar in that way, where it takes elements of the original movie, it takes elements of the musical production, and it kind of throws it in a blender. It updates the story, it modernizes it, and it kind of is there and available for a new generation to accept it and appreciate it. And like I said, very different from The Color Purple, but I think The Color Purple also kind of mixed and matched a little bit to be there for a new generation and to make that story accessible for them. And so both of those films remind me of each other, of this new kind of era that we're going in. And, you know, in music and movies, I think there's so much power there. So, you know, right off the bat, and I saw Mean Girls with my teenage daughter, who just adored the film. And so that, for me, like if we're talking about the beginning of the year, Mean Girls is definitely up there. Would highly recommend that one. Also, Jason Statham has a new action movie coming out, The Beekeeper, in January. Speaking of award season, if you are somebody who missed, say, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer in IMAX or an IMAX 70 millimeter, that's returning to theaters in January, as is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Those were two of my favorite movies to watch with a crowd. Speaking of, in 2023, the experience of watching that with a packed house was just awesome, both of those films. And so they're both back in theaters in January. And so January is a little bit of a mix. It's like throwing stuff into a blender, but those are a few things there. And then into February, there's an action movie from Universal called Argyle. There's a Sony Marvel movie called Madam Web, etc.
I can't. Argyle looks so good, and there was a screening on Monday that I'm so mad I wasn't able to make, but I am really excited to see that. That looks really good. Speaking of kind of this new generation sort of thing that, you know, you kind of were talking about with Wonka, with Mean Girls, with The Color Purple. What's interesting to me, you know, people are always, some people complain about, oh, Hollywood, you know, needs new IP and blah blah blah. One, for me, a good film or whatever the project is a good film or a project, you know. And if you are finding your own take or whatever, and especially in the case of The Color Purple, and as you're saying, Mean Girls, where it is not, you know, it's not like Psycho, the shot for shot remake that they did. You know, this is its own spin on things. And it's interesting because I heard a girl, as we were watching The Color Purple, say to her father or something about, oh, I think she was in the original. She was talking about Whoopi Goldberg, who has a cameo in it. And it made me think, this girl has no idea. She's never seen The Color Purple, and, you know, the original. And so that power that a classic, something I consider a classic film like The Color Purple has for me and the generations, you know, before me or whatever that had that film, this is their version of that. She had never seen it, so this is her chance to experience that story. Similarly with Wonka, my godson was saying, "Oh, Wonka looks great," blah blah blah. He had seen the Tim Burton Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but he didn't have that connection like, I think millennials and Gen Xers and on had with the original. And this is kind of their chance to get that in a new way for us that are familiar and perhaps beloved the original. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So for me, it doesn't matter if you're telling it in a fresh way or you have a new perspective on it from new filmmakers, and have at it, and obviously the box office, if we look at the box office, the top films often every single year are IP, whether it's sequels or remakes or whatever. So people are obviously responding to it,
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think of Mean Girls in that way too, because I had a lot of people say, like, they don't need another Mean Girls. Like, the first one's a classic. You don't need to do this again. But then I look at my daughter, who is now a teenager going to high school in the year 2024. And that film, the new version, takes place now. They're using slang of the day. TikTok stars are in it. She's leaning over and say, "Oh, that I follow that person on TikTok and that person." And so these themes of bullying and of sort of standing up for yourself and everybody's talking behind everybody's back. So why don't we just all kind of forget it and drop it and get along? So like these themes that are still ridiculously relevant, even more so these days with social media, I think they stick with her. More so. And she's a fan of the original. But this film, I think, really sticks with her because she can relate to it. And so when people say, we don't need another version of this for the modern era, I say we actually do need, not everything, but some films, I think, that have powerful themes that, even if it's a comedy or if it's a drama, I think the new generation kind of needs that in their lives as well. And I mean, familiar IP. And we have our survey of our 10 most anticipated 2024 movies, where when I talk to you about it, you're going to be like, all of these are sequels and remakes. And we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
But that's what audiences are drawn to first and foremost. They're drawn to sort of what's familiar, what's comfortable. That's not to say that original stuff doesn't exist in between the familiar, but audiences first and foremost are drawn to what makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And I, missed the boat by like 20 years for the original Star Wars to be in theaters or whatever. So my kind of time for Star Wars was the prequel trilogy. That was where I was in grade school or whatever. And that was my hype around Star Wars. And obviously I wouldn't have had that had the prequel trilogy not come out. It would have just been this kind of, everybody talks about this huge thing called Star Wars from, 1977 or whatever, and how people were flocking to the movies and all that sort of thing. But it wouldn't register with me for Star Wars because I wasn't alive. And without that prequel trilogy, I would never have become the kind of big Star Wars fan that I am today. Guardians of the Galaxy, I always say this, when I saw that in the theater, the original Guardians of the Galaxy, I said to myself, this must be what it felt like to see the original Star Wars in theaters for me. And I had that kind of magical moment where I'm just captivated by what's going on. And I'm like, wow, this is like so cool and blah, blah, blah. And those moments matter, no matter, in my opinion, no matter, what films or IP they come from, because that was a big moment, if you will, in my movie going history for me to go and see Guardians and just be in awe of the power of film, So I think those things are always important.
Well, without a doubt, I think of Dune as well. I mean, when I saw the new Dune, I kind of got these like Star Wars-esque chills. I was like, wow, they don't do a lot of, they do big sci-fi these days, but I think there's a certain level of sci-fi and craftsmanship that Denis Villeneuve introduced with his Dune movie that I'm hopeful will continue with Dune Part 2. But like in this era, in terms of like there being this new Star Wars, what they've been able to do with that, at least that first film, kind of gave me goosebumps in terms of bringing this new world in. Dune, of course, was an inspiration for Star Wars. And so very excited about that sequel. I think that's going to be the first big movie of the year. But, Star Wars is a really, really great example because, I grew up with the original trilogy, but my friend, I know people that grew up with the prequels. That, Anakin, is very important. That's more important than Luke to a lot of people. And then like my kids grew up with Ray and Finn. My dogs are named Ray and Finn because
that's awesome.
That's their Star Wars. And I think that's when I look at Star Wars, the success of Star Wars is because there's been a version of it for each of these generations to not just, embrace within their generation, but then also to pass down as well. And so it's really, really wonderful to see.
I love that. Sorry, I got sidetracked a bit. So speaking of, top Fandango has a list of the public's top 10 most anticipated films. What are you able to give us the list?
Yeah, without a doubt. And this was a survey that went out to over 8,000 ticket buyers. So these are people that are buying tickets. They're people that are going to the movies, and we asked them not just about their most anticipated films and performances, but also like movie going habits, and which I think is important, and it's been a very hot topic, especially post COVID. People going to the movies, going back to the movies. 88% of people that we surveyed plan to see multiple movies in theaters in 2024. Over 80% more excited to go to the movies in 2024 than 2023. And I also think another really big thing, over 70% want to see them in a premium format like IMAX or Dolby.
And just if I could interject real quick, do you know how that compares to last year?
Yeah, I would say that I think it's probably, I know that more people were excited to see movies in 2023 than in 22. So it keeps going up.
Okay.
The excitement level of people that want to see more in theaters. And I think that a lot of that is propelled by sort of these event moments in the year. Barbenheimer, I think, is the biggest one of 2023. Even something like Taylor Swift's concert movie, which I think made a big dent as well, even as Five Nights at Freddy's, which was a huge, fan-friendly property that did really well too. So, and like, I think, my last point was in the IMAX and the Dolby. I think a lot more people are drawn to sort of, I'm going to go out of the house, if I'm going to go watch something on the big screen, not on my TV, I want to go like big. I want to have an event in my life. So that's why I think IMAX and Dolby are so prevalent on here. But I mean, in terms of the most anticipated films, like I said, they're all sort of either belong to a franchise or there is a sequel. Not surprisingly, Marvel Studios has led this list many times, leads it again. Deadpool 3. Yes. Being the number one most anticipated film, and a big film for Marvel Studios, their only film this year. Some of the stuff they had on the docket moved over to 2025. And so it's just Deadpool 3. And so a lot riding on this one. This is their first R-rated film as well. Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine. So just a lot of excitement, kind of building it as a buddy comedy through the multiverse, which I'm all about.
Yeah, and I'm so excited because I think it's a perfect film that if they are looking to soft reset in any way, which some fans are demanding they do, I think there's a lot of opportunity of what they can do with this film, Deadpool being a kind of, breaking the third wall, sort of third wall? Fourth wall.
The fourth wall.
Fourth wall, thank you. Deadpool sort of breaking this fourth wall sort of character where he's in on it with the viewer. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to, like I said, do a soft reset if needed, if they, feel that that's where they can go. But this is the perfect opportunity to do that. Even if they don't, I'm really looking forward to this film. Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool for me, and I think that's probably my most anticipated film of the year as well.
Yes, also a marketing genius, Mr. Ryan Reynolds,
Yes.
as well, which helps that film. Next three, two, three, and four, Beetlejuice 2. There's a sequel to Beetlejuice coming out. Michael Keaton is returning. Winona Ryder is returning. Jenna Ortega, one of the hottest up-and-coming stars right now, of course, was Wednesday Addams in Tim Burton's series. Is going to star as Winona Ryder's daughter in the film. Tim Burton returning to direct. So I think a lot of nostalgia and love of Beetlejuice, the original, kind of bleeding into the reason why that is number two. And then, I mean, speaking of 80s franchises, number three is Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. I think a lot of people excited for that one, A, because it's returning to New York City, but B, because that Ghostbusters Afterlife cast, Paul Rudd, Finn Wolfhard, etc., is joining forces with the old school Ghostbusters, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, etc. So I think that's why there's a lot of, again, multi-generational excitement around that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm, those top three for on the Fandango list are probably my top three as well. I mean, definitely Deadpool. I'm not sure how I would put Beetlejuice and Ghostbusters. They're kind of equal for me, but I am really looking forward to both. Beetlejuice. I mean, I was a kid when I came out, and that just has such a big, I have such a big soft spot for that film, and Tim Burton is one of my favorites. I mean, I cannot wait for that. And then Ghostbusters, similarly, it wasn't really until I got a little bit older that I started, because I had an older cousin and my cousin's aunt as well, that was much younger than our parents. And so I kind of got into a lot of stuff from her, where she'd be into these kind of probably too edgy for me things at the time. But I picked up some cool stuff along the way. One of them was Ghostbusters and Beetlejuice and that sort of thing. It's just, like you said, the nostalgia factor where it just has that special place in my heart and my life. And to have it done well, I think Ghostbusters Afterlife was so well done with such a loving touch to and respect for the original property that it really did bring it into today in a perfect way, really. And so I think there's a lot of goodwill going into that with people like myself and yourself who loved the original two films, and then people that loved the Ghostbusters Afterlife that are bringing this hope and excitement to Frozen Empire. So that's awesome. I can't wait for those.
Yeah. And it's hard to do, right? It's hard to sort of bring these franchises from the 80s that had very 80s sensibilities into the 2020s, when times have changed, people have evolved, society has evolved, and you still need to make this relevant for a modern audience. Like, that's one of the hardest things to do. We see some films stumble, some films really get it. I agree with you. I think it comes down to the filmmaker and the appreciation and understanding the tone and how to adjust it when needed. And it's funny because we talk about Ghostbusters 1984, the year the first one came out.
That's when it came out. Oh.
Yeah, very much a theme this year. Beverly Hills Cop. Also, Eddie Murphy came out then, and there's a new Beverly Hills Cop. It's actually a Netflix movie this year, but Eddie Murphy returning to the role. And so the 80s, Beetlejuice, 88. So the 80s very much alive and well in 2024. Number 4 on that list was a film I was just talking to you about. Probably this would be I would say number 2 or even number 1, personal, Dune Part 2. I think that we spoke about the original Dune, or the first Dune that of the new Dune,
right,
the original Dune. But I just think that the cast is just tremendous. Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya are back. Zendaya is going to have a much larger role. They've added Christopher Walken as the Emperor. I mean, to have Christopher Walken as an Emperor of a galaxy, I think is just an amazing choice.
Absolutely.
Florence Pugh, Austin Butler, who played Elvis, nominated for an Oscar. He's the big villain in this film. And then also more from the other film, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, all returning. But yeah, I mean, just the cast, the quality of filmmaking. I think Denis Villeneuve, I would put him up there with your Christopher Nolans and your Scorseses in terms of like modern era filmmakers that just every time they have something come out, you're compelled to see it, especially on a big screen. So watching Dune Part 2 in IMAX, honestly, I haven't done it yet. Going to be one of my most anticipated movie-going experiences, at least early on in this year.
And what's that? So that's the top five.
Number 5 is Venom 3.
Sony 3.
Yeah, Sony Marvel. We said Marvel Studios only has one movie out this year. Sony's Marvel, they have 3 out. Only one of those is mentioned here. The other 2 being Madam Web, which comes out in February, Kraven the Hunter, which comes out in August. But Venom 3, I would say maybe aside from Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who's shared with Marvel Studios, I would say Venom, probably the most popular of those Sony Marvel spinoffs. Of course, Tom Hardy stars, and there is a third Venom due out in October.
Yeah, that is definitely a movie that's coming out.
But yeah, I mean, of course, a lot of people want to see Tom Hardy's Venom kind of at some point.
I do.
Yeah, he's great in the role. He gets it. Yeah, and he's good. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I think the second one went off the rails a little bit. Yeah. So I'm hoping better things for the third one.
Yes. So that rounds out the 5. 6 and 7, I would say 2 of the bigger family films of this year. Despicable Me 4 is at number 6. Of course, the return of the Minions and Gru. I mean, this is a franchise that's grossed over $4 billion globally. Arguably Illumination's most popular franchise. It's seen a spinoff with the Minions. They have their own franchise in addition to Despicable Me. So that's going to be Play Like Gangbusters comes out in July, which is when those films like to slide in. Probably going to be one of the biggest earners of the summer and probably of the year as well. But right next to it, Inside Out 2, a sequel to, I would say, one of the more beloved Pixar movies. And, before I was talking about my daughter, this is a real, and you were talking about Guardians, kind of growing up with a movie and being able to follow a character who's growing up along with you. And so Inside Out 2 picks up with Riley as a teenager. And, of course, dealing with new emotions of being a teenager, anxiety being one of them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I know that one well.
Yes. But it's lovely. I think that, to have a franchise where, you're a young kid and it speaks to you in that way, but then the sequel picks up with you at the age that you're at. Yeah. And then if Inside Out 3, maybe they pick up with Riley as she's graduating high school or going to college or something. And it's nice for a generation to have those beats there because it's somebody that they're relating to and growing up with.
Absolutely. In many ways, it's similar for me to Toy Story. It was kind of Andy growing up as I was growing up, which I have found interesting and cool because it's not too often that that happens, and so it is kind of a unique thing and then on the viewer side, you're remembering where you were in your life while seeing that particular chapter in the franchise,
Exactly. And it just speaks, I think it speaks about saying goodbye to your childhood. And, that's why the coming of age genre is one of my favorite genres, because I think those movies more than any help a generation when they need the most help, sort of understanding the changes between elementary school and middle school and high school and sort of that uncomfortableness and the way kids treat each other. And, I think at those moments when you're 13, 14, 15, especially for girls, I think to have films, and I go to every film that means a lot to a young woman, I bring to my daughter, even if I feel like it might be a little bit too much for her, because I do think like when you can't talk to your parents or you can't talk to your friends, sometimes there's a film there that is giving you the answers that you desperately need. And so that's why I'm really a big fan of that. Going into 8, 9, Lord of the Rings is back. But it's interesting because Lord of the Rings is back with speaking of trends, a new trend. It's an animated version of Lord of the Rings. And this speaks to, Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, we saw did really well with animation. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, one of my favorite animated movies of last year. And so, can these big franchises pivot to animation and find a lot of success there? Not everybody can do it, but they may be able to do it with Lord of the Rings. Also, Transformers attempting to do it this year as well. There's a film called Transformers 1 that's animated. And then number 9, Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
Speaking of a classic, that one returns Best Picture winner, the first Gladiator. Ridley Scott returning, not Russell Crowe. This one will have Paul Mescal, who is a big up-and-coming actor, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal. So a lot of people looking forward to that.
How long has it been since the first Gladiator? Do you remember?
What are we looking at? 2000, I want to say. It won Best Picture. So, I mean, this one picks up 20 years later. So, like early 2000s. This is kind of, it picks up 20 years later with Paul Mescal's character, who plays the son, I believe, of Russell Crowe's character. And he's kind of been off in hiding for a long time, and he's kind of reemerging. I believe that is the premise here. So great cast. Ridley Scott is back, and I think he does a great job. So could it be another Oscar contender? It's coming out right in that November timeframe. We'll see.
And what about number 10?
Number 10 is another interesting one, another sort of franchise movie. It's A Quiet Place Day One. So you remember the John Krasinski, the 2 Quiet Place movies. This one, a spin-off of those. This is not Quiet Place Part 3. So Emily Blunt, this isn't an Emily Blunt and that crew. This is a whole new cast led by Lupita Nyong'o, and it's about sort of that day one. So if you remember Quiet Place Part 2, it opens up the day the monsters arrive, and there's that chaos that's happening. So I would say imagine an entire film taking place on that day in some other location, and that would be Quiet Place Day One.
Yeah, I love that. I think the A Quiet Place films are extremely well done, and I love them. So I am looking forward to this myself. There's a few that I'm looking forward to that were not on the list. Godzilla, Kong.
Yes.
Oh my God, not Frozen Empire. Godzilla, Kong.
I think it's like a new empire. There's a lot of I believe it's Godzilla X Kong, A New Empire.
Okay.
And then this Frozen Empire is Ghostbusters.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I love what Legendary has done with this series. Kong Skull Island is one of my probably top 20 favorite films. I love it so much. And then the Monarch series that Apple TV Plus has is such a cool entry, I guess, into that world that I just think they've done this whole thing masterfully, and I'm really looking forward to that. Also, I believe it's called If by John Krasinski.
Yes, If,
really
Imaginary Friend.
Yes. So those are 2 that are not on the list that I'm really looking forward to as well. What are some of yours that that aren't on the list, but you're like, I can't wait?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right up there in my top 3, not on the list, would be Furiosa, the Mad Max Fury Road prequel.
Yeah.
I mean, look, George Miller, I think, is a genius with the Mad Max series. Mad Max Fury Road, I think, is among the best films of the past 25 years. So to get another film in that world, even though, look, am I crazy that it's a prequel? I'm never so crazy about prequels because we kind of know where the story ends up. Right. But just to watch another story be told in this world, directed by George Miller, is what I am jonesing for. So really excited for that. Chris Hemsworth, Anya Taylor-Joy plays the younger Furiosa, who is played by Charlize Theron in Fury Road. So that is up there for me. I would also look at that Joker sequel. You know, Joaquin Phoenix is coming back. Todd Phillips directs. Lady Gaga is starring, I believe, as Harley Quinn. It's like a musical, apparently. Yeah. So I don't know what this film is going to be, but it's probably going to be very different from that first Joker, which was a huge box office success for Warner Brothers. So that's there. And then also another film I'm really curious about because I'm a big Karate Kid fan. Speaking of the 80s, and I think it came out in 1984. So this might be another 1984 movie. But yeah, there's a Karate Kid movie. I also watched the Cobra Kai Netflix series, and Ralph Macchio is in it, but then Jackie Chan is also in it.
Right.
And Jackie Chan starred as
all the worlds.
Yeah, so it's like this multiverse Karate Kid movie. So I don't know what it's about. All we've seen was like Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan, like a casting video looking for the next Karate Kid. So I consider my interest super peaked because I'm a Karate Kid nerd. But that one I think is due out in December.
And what are your predictions for like the top 3 biggest hits of the year, box office wise?
I would say Despicable Me 4, I think, will be up there. We could even see Inside Out 2. This could be a big year where Pixar comes roaring back, I would say, to remind us of the power of Pixar. So we could see those 2 up there. I think Deadpool 3 will be up there. The other Deadpool movies have done very well. I would look maybe at that Joker movie. The first one, I think it cleared $1 billion globally, but it's a huge film. So I would put that in there. And then you have some wild cards, because will Beetlejuice resonate with a new generation, and will that help go? Wednesday, the series Wednesday was a phenomenon for Netflix. Yeah. Will that spill over into Beetlejuice? Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, will that find its footing? Godzilla X Kong. So there are some of these wild cards out there that on paper, they're big movies. There's a lot of anticipation about them. Once they land, will audiences find them and embrace them? So we'll have to see.
Yeah, and then I think the fun part of what we do is then you get what you would think would be outliers. Like, I mean, everybody knew Barbie was going to be big, but I don't think anybody knew Barbie was going to be that big. And then Oppenheimer, of course, it's Christopher Nolan, and that has a built-in audience. But I don't think any of us probably could have predicted that these 2 movies would be these giant juggernauts if we were having this conversation at last January. You know what I'm saying? And so these kind of some of those things kind of go from, oh yeah, that's going to be a big movie, to wow, this is like a cultural juggernaut that we probably weren't expecting.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we'll have to see. Like, I'm looking at my schedule now, and after the Barbenheimer weekend, everybody was like, what's our next Barbenheimer weekend? What's the next weekend where like you have these two films that could potentially combine for this magical skyrocketing event extravaganza? There doesn't seem to be a lot of those on the dock. I mean, we have weekends that have multiple films in it. May 24th has Garfield. They have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and Furiosa.
That was another one I was looking forward to, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yes. So that and Furiosa and Garfield, which Chris Pratt playing Garfield, all 3 of those are coming out on the same weekend. So we could see a lot of action at the movie theaters. But in terms of like the next Barbenheimer weekend, I'm personally going into 2025. We have the Megan 2, the sequel to Megan, and Paddington 3 are both on the same weekend. I'm calling it Megington. So let's get that going now. But that could be the next Barbenheimer. We'll see.
I love that. Where can we find you, Erik?
Yeah, I mean, find me at Fandango, talking all things movies at all times. You can find me on Twitter or X at Erik with a K Davis, and on all the other socials in that space for sure.
Awesome. And as always, we can go to fandango.com and get all of the latest and get your tickets as well. So Erik,
yes, and I would also note that all of these films that we talked about are part of a franchise. They are sequels. All of those previous installments we have available to watch, rent or buy at home on Vudu as well, so you can catch up before these hit theaters.
Awesome. Thank you, Erik Davis. Please come back again and let's talk movies.
Without a doubt, man. Take care.
You too. Erik Davis, Fandango managing editor, fellow pop culture, movie, film, streaming, limited series, TV, technology lover. Always love talking with Erik Davis. You can go and see the list and everything else you want regarding movies on Fandango.com. We have the links in the show notes as well as a link right to that list, the most anticipated movies of 2024. And you can follow Erik right in the links in the show notes as well. So that's our show for today. I'm looking forward to continuing to bring you more pop culture goodness and incredible interviews with the people that you love and I love in pop culture and more. And like I said, we're going to be really heavy on video this year. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming your way. And I can't wait to talk with you about all of it. All the pop culture goodness. All right, that's our show for this week. Hit me up. Go to the website, popcultureweekly.com, or if you want the podcast information, show notes, and related stuff and all that, go to podcast.popcultureweekly.com. And I will see you soon. I love you. We out.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Weekly. Hear all the latest at popcultureweekly.com.
It's the most anticipated movies of 2024. Last year we did this for 23, and now we're back for more.